Hey there, my name is Dossey, and in today's video, I want to talk to you about reverse wholesaling, what it is and kind of where it fits in a real estate investor's toolbox. If you're like me and you've been around wholesaling houses, maybe you've wholesaled some yourself, or maybe you're just kind of researching how the whole wholesaling houses thing works, you might run into a little bit of an ethical concern, which is, how do I tell somebody I'm going to buy a property and negotiate to purchase a property if I don't personally have that money to buy that deal? And what happens if I can't find a buyer? Which is where reverse wholesaling comes in. I'm gonna walk you through what it is, how it works, and this is gonna be kind of like a for dummies version of reverse wholesaling. Let's dive right in. So wholesaling houses, kind of quick brief overview. I'm gonna do a whole deep dive on kind of how this works, but the long and short of it is you're getting in touch with somebody who owns a property. You are figuring out what it's worth, deciding how much work it needs put into it, and then you are trying to negotiate a really good deal on that property where you can go and sell it to somebody else at a markup. Now, how wholesaling works that makes it unique and why it's so attractive to a lot of newbie real estate investors, myself included, this is how I got started, is you're not actually buying the property and turning around and reselling it. You're just negotiating a good deal, selling it to somebody else for more, and the contracts in the middle is what allows you to get paid that difference without actually having to close on the house or tie up your own cash. The tricky part with wholesaling is you have to know how to analyze what a property is worth. You've got to be able to run comps. You have to be able to understand as well as estimate how much work something needs. If you're like me, I didn't come from a construction background. My construction experience was limited to working with my dad on summers who installed security systems. I think one of his favorite stories about working with me, I was probably 15, 16, feeling myself a little bit. We were hanging a TV and he caught me flexing, looking at my bicep while I was mounting it. That's about the end of my experience with construction. After that, I got straight into sales. So I wasn't really good at understanding how much a new kitchen cost, how much a roof cost, how much carpet and paint were gonna be or things of that nature. And then on the flip side, I wasn't somebody who was a realtor. So I wasn't trained in figuring out how much properties cost, what they'd go for fixed up, what they need to go for that top dollar, anything like that. So those are kind of some of the challenges with wholesaling. A little bit of the ethical bit that a lot of people struggle with, myself included. I did several wholesale deals and then I kind of ran into this I'm telling somebody that I'm gonna buy their house, but I'm not the one buying their house. And if I can't find somebody to buy their house, I have to try to cancel a contract. It just kind of felt ethically a little murky, if I'm being blunt. So that's where reverse wholesaling comes in. The neat thing with reverse wholesaling is you don't have to understand how to run comps. You don't have to understand how to estimate repair costs, and you're getting cash offers from people that want to buy that property before you've made an offer or even gone under contract with that seller. The perk of that is you don't really have that ethical dilemma of well, hopefully I can find somebody to pay this number that I told the seller they would get. And you also don't have to have the expertise of being able to run comps or necessarily estimate repair costs. Now, I'll link to a video above if you're watching this on YouTube about how I made $100,000 utilizing this strategy back in 2017. This was kind of what pulled me out of all my debt and everything of that nature. So it's something that I'm very fond of that goes into the how-tos a little bit more. But let's get into the steps of how reverse wholesaling actually works. So step one of reverse wholesaling is you have to find a seller that has a property that they're looking to sell. Because that kind of goes hand in hand, right? If they're a seller, they have a house they want to sell. There's kind of this myth in real estate investing that you need to be looking for motivated or desperate sellers. I'll challenge that with what you're really looking for is just somebody who's reasonable. They understand the facts of what they've got. They understand that if their house isn't perfect, they're not going to get top dollar. That's the kind of folks that we're working with. Now, my personal favorite way to get in touch with sellers, kind of find leads as a real estate investor, is direct mail, search engine optimization, which is ranking for things on Google, we buy houses, things of that nature, Facebook ads, Google pay-per-click, and kind of networking and referrals. A lot of folks like to do like cold calling, SMS marketing. It's not really strategies we widely use because there are kind of some potential legal concerns there. But step one, you want to get in front of somebody and kind of get yourself on an appointment, like go check out the property. The second step you've got kind of on that appointment with the seller is just to build a ton of rapport. Get to know them, get to know why they want to sell the house, figure out why they bought it, what's going on with it, any kind of concerns they have. But your real goal kind of on this fact-finding mission is to take tons and tons of pictures of the property. We're talking like 100 plus. If there's anything that looks weird or goofy or bad, right? Like, it looks like the water's coming in the ceiling there. All major mechanical, so HVAC, water heater, panel box, right? If the property has a basement, take pictures of the walls, look for any cracks or things of that nature. You want like multiple shots of every single room, multiple shots of the exterior, straight on, sides, back. Try to get the roof, any like brickwork or chimney stuff looks like it's going on. Your goal with this is to give the buyers that we're going to talk about in an upcoming step all of the ammunition they need to determine what they would want to pay for that property. You don't have to have like a $10,000 DSLR. These don't need to be like 4K virtual reality pictures or anything. Any like newer iPhone would work. For my Android fam, come on. As long as your pictures don't look like they were taken with a potato, you should be totally fine. The third step is going to be sending out the address and that batch of pictures you took to guys like me that are looking to buy properties in your market. Now, one thing that I do want to clarify here, kind of just help you with, don't upload all of those photos into like a Google Drive or like a Dropbox. That makes it pretty hard for them to be able to like go through them. They can't just scroll through them real quick. I like to use Google Photos, and I like to create an album per like batch of pictures. Now, one thing you can do if you're worried about somebody like stealing a deal that you don't even have yet, right, is you can make that album invite only. That way nobody can share those pictures. It's only going to be the people you invite to check them out. Now, I've got another training I'll link to above on how to find cash buyers like this, but realistically, it's just networking. If you go to your local RIA, if you keep an eye on like your local real estate investment groups, there's going to be names that pop up all the time of people who are doing deals. You post even on Bigger Pockets, right? Like who's actively buying flips or rentals in such and such town, and you're going to get people that hit you up. Now, here's the cool thing with a lot of these flippers and landlords. They don't want to do the work that you're willing to do of going out and meeting with people, getting to know them, building rapport, making an offer, following up. So they're going to be thrilled to look through just a group of pictures, run comps on an address you give them, and tell you what they would like to pay for that property. Now, you might have some people that end up being like duds, right? Where you send them stuff and they don't get back with you in a timely manner. All you really need is like 2 or 3 guys that are willing to take the time to look at what you send them, give you a number, and you go back and try to get the deal done for them. So kind of step 3 there is just finding the people that want to look at the deals that you're coming across. The 4th step is going to be getting back kind of that number that your local cash buyers are willing to pay. So when we flick a deal over, right, it'll be like, here's the address, here's some pics, detailed notes of like anything we notice that's wrong with the property that it needs, and they're just going to hit us back with a number. Yeah, hey, I'm at $250,000. Your job is to then go back to the seller and make them the offer on that property. Now, there's something that I want to highlight here, because a lot of times investors, particularly new ones, will make the mistake of like, oh, it needs $50,000 worth of work because that's what their buyer told them, or that's even what they've estimated if they're, say, just wholesaling. I never tell sellers, this is how much your house needs in work, or this is what your house is worth. Because if you ask 5 different realtors how much something is worth, and if you ask 5 different contractors how much something is going to cost, you're going to get 5 or 10 different numbers, right? So my integrity is too important to let somebody else make me a liar. So how we always explain it is, in order for me to get this particular property up to my standards with my contractors, it's going to cost me X. Anytime you tell a homeowner or somebody you're doing business with, this is how much something's going to cost, or they always tell you, oh, I've got a guy who can do it cheaper. You know, our kind of joke is like, hey, you know, your buddy that you pay a natty light might give you that price, but he's not going to do that for me. So I've got a budget for what my guys are wanting to do, right? So how we make our offers to our sellers is really pretty straightforward, based off of kind of these concerns with the property. You know, knowing that with my contractors, it's going to cost me this much money to get the property up to snuff. You know, what do you think is a fair sales price? I'm always trying to get the number out of them first. Once they kind of give us a number, we'll either explain, well, you know, property's in perfect shape, don't even sell for that. Or, you know, hey, I actually don't think we're too far off, but I can't be quite that high. I would be around here. That's kind of when we're then making an offer. So step 4 is to kind of make that offer. Ideally, you get them to accept. Now, something super important that I should have said at the beginning of this point, this is where you make your money in reverse wholesaling. So your buyer tells you $250,000. Your goal is to get the deal for like $240 or even like $230. That way there's margin for you there in the middle, right? If your buyer wants it at $250, you get it at $250. Guess what, Holmes? You worked for free, right? So the goal is to get it with enough margin in there. And we typically shoot for like $8,000 to $10,000 minimum. However, that's really where you make your money. One thing I do just kind of want to advise you on, don't make the mistake of throwing your best offer out right away. So if he's at $250, you're trying to make 8, so your MAO or max allowable offer you want to pay is say $242. You don't want to start there because then you don't really have any room to go up, right? So you might want to start in like the mid 230s, or if you're feeling froggy, I mean, 200 grand, right? Everything's negotiable in real estate. You can throw out whatever you want and just kind of see what happens. So if you've made it to step 5, that means they've agreed to your offer. And how this works, you're going to go under contract with them with what we call like a purchase and sale agreement. Now, disclaimer, I'm going to link to mine in the comments on the YouTube video of this. So if you're not on YouTube, search Ryan Dossey on YouTube. While you're there, you might as well subscribe. I'm going to give you the one that I use. Now, this is not my contract. I didn't type this up. I got it from somebody else and then had my attorney like do some tweaks to it. Anytime I give you something like this, my kind of like cover my own rear is you need to have your own legal counsel look at it. You can't come back to me and be like, well, this doesn't work in my state. I'm not in your state, right? Even somebody in my market, their attorney might not like this particular contract, but if you're, you know, a total newbie, I'll throw mine in the comments down below. So you're going under contract with the seller, and then depending on your buyer, you might enter into a second contract, which is known as double closing. So the first contract has the seller as the seller, you as the buyer. The second contract would have you as the seller and your buyer as the buyer, and that goes to your local title company or attorney, and they'll kind of handle the paperwork and get you paid. If your buyer's cool with it, you might not even need to do that. You can do what's just called an assignment. So how an assignment works, we've got our initial contract with the seller, with you as the buyer, and you're giving your right to purchase that property over to somebody else for like what's known as an assignment fee. So the perk of that is you don't have to pay closing costs or transaction fees or anything like that. So if your assignment fee is $12,000, that's what you actually get. Whereas on a double close, you might end up getting more like 9 or 10, depending on your title company or attorney. Another like style of this way of getting into real estate is what's known as bird dogging. I'm personally not a big fan of bird dogging because it puts way more burden on the people that you're working with. In a bird dogging relationship, you're literally being like, hey, here's an address of something that looks ugly and here's the phone number of the owner. I think they might want to sell, right? With this, we're a little bit more involved in the process. We're the point of contact for the seller, so we've got a little bit more control. Now, I know what you're gonna ask me if you're watching this, which is, how do I prevent one of my buyers from going around me and going direct to the seller? Here's honest to goodness truth, you can't, right? However, that being said, real estate is a relatively small niche. If somebody is screwing over people that are trying to bring them deals and add value, word's gonna get out on that really, really, really quick. The guys that I've personally reverse wholesaled to, I never ran into a single problem or hiccup with. You know, this is kind of one of those things like you have to trust people, you have to network, and I try to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. So when you're early on in this relationship, you might end up finding a couple like bad actors in your market, and that's totally fine. You just know who not to do business with. That kind of comes with the turf. However, that really is pretty rare, and I wouldn't let that fear stop you from utilizing this as a strategy to turn a profit in real estate without having to have the capital or the money to actually buy houses. There's not a ton of information actually out there on kind of this like reverse wholesaling piece. And we could totally package this into a course, but I'm not going to because I want as many of you guys to see it as possible. So all I ask is that you take the time to like the video. And if you're on YouTube, share and subscribe. If you're not on YouTube, bare minimum you can do is like the thing, right? I also think we're one of the first channels to talk about kind of this ethical dilemma that you can run into with wholesaling. Be a lot easier to just like pretend it doesn't exist, but you run into this kind of like lying by omission thing of like, I'm gonna buy your house, but I don't necessarily have the money to, and it's gonna be contingent on my partner, and I don't know who that partner is yet, right? Peace. So, I mean, if you appreciate kind of this bluntness, appreciate you supporting the channel. One of my favorite ways to use reverse wholesaling is to monetize properties that don't match what I normally buy. So if you're somebody who focuses on like nicer properties and like good neighborhoods, and you get a lead on something like totally in the ghetto that just doesn't match what you normally do, instead of you being like, hey, sorry, I can't help you, you can reverse wholesale that to the people that are involved in that particular part of town and monetize those leads that otherwise you'd just be passing on. We've done this with like land. You might do it with something like an apartment complex or a self-storage facility if that's just not in your wheelhouse. I hope that you enjoyed kind of this for dummies deep dive of reverse wholesaling, what it is, how it works, and why I'm personally more of a fan of newbie investors utilizing this strategy. The way they're not out there tying up stuff that they're not sure if they can move. I know that goes kind of against the typical like wholesaler guy on YouTube, but that's just my personal view. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Be sure to like and subscribe. Again, my name is Ryan Dossey. We'll talk to you next time.